Hi everyone, welcome to Saturday Morning Talk Toons with your host Kwan and
Carlos.
where we talk all things cartoons and anime. For today's episode, we will be discussing the Netflix original animated series Seis Manos.
Bienvenidos. Dun, 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 dun.
The series follows a trio of martial artists who seek to unravel the murder of their Sifu while protecting their small town from rabid mutants created by supernatural forces at the disposal of a fierce crime boss. We will be talking about this series in detail, so if you haven't seen it yet, consider this your spoiler warning. Pause this video, go watch it, come back and listen to us. Now, I will definitely say that when it comes to animated series, because it takes place in Mexico, it's really rare for us to get like Latino representation in shows like this. I haven't seen like this much like representation, I think, since the Arrancar storyline in Bleach. However, with all that said, Carlos, what are some of your thoughts about it?
No, I thought it was really cool. Yes, just seeing a lot of it was specifically in Mexican culture, but yes, there was a lot of cool Latin representation, like little things like that we'll speak about later. But yeah, that I was very familiar with growing up as a kid. So yeah, I thought it was very interesting, and I can't wait to explain more of that as we dwell on the storyline.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you're not a fluent Spanish speaker, you don't have to worry about that because the majority of the series is in English. There's a few like terminologies here and there that they say in Spanish, but for the most part, you're gonna definitely be able to follow along because I do not speak Spanish fluently. However, my favorite Spanish word is brujeria, and that is where the story starts off because there is a like a cult or initiation type thing going on, where there's this guy and he's being branded with a locust with a
Lotus.
lotus, sorry, locust, with a lotus on his body. And yeah, they seem to be like, I don't know, worshiping this statue, like this kind of like dead living statue known as Santa Lucifia.
Yeah, actually, it's Santa Lucifera, which
Lucifea, okay.
Fera. But anyway, basically Lucifer. And I had to look into it more. But yes, apparently there is a Spanish version of Lucifer. So I believe it's a feminine form, and it's light bearer. So yeah, this is like a demon statue, a female demon statue.
Yeah, so they end up the main crime boss character. He ends up creating some. He has some ashes that is created from like, I guess, the flesh of the statue.
I thought it was the tears or
Yeah, like the
blood.
tears. Yeah, some from, yeah, like the tears, and he uses that and he draws like was a
The
cross.
cross, yeah,
Yeah.
and and that's very common in Latin culture. Is like in the name of the Father, Son. Like Latin culture is predominantly Catholic or Christian. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, it was very understandable that they did a cross symbol. But yeah, and this big boss is his name is El Balde, which is voiced by Danny Trejo, and Danny Trejo, he's very famous for his movie work. Not for his voice work, but yeah, like he's done Desperado, Spy Kids, Anaconda. He's major roles. A lot of movies. The list goes on.
Yeah, so after he draws this cross on this guy there that's kind of being initiated, he begins to mutate into like this rabid like version of himself. And that is where you already see this series definitely there's gonna be a lot going on dealing with the supernatural. So pretty much he goes crazy. He ends up kind of escaping like the little area that they were all like mustered up in. And then from there, we segue over to a little boy stealing a mango in a small town, and pretty much like the cop of the town known as Officer Garcia ends up chasing after the boy. His name is Domingo, and in the process of running away from her, he comes across a bit of a slightly hidden dojo that's not too far away from the small town. And there, that's where he sees these two characters training.
Right. He sees Isabella and Jesus training, and like he said, it's a dojo, and their fighting style. If you ever watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, you would actually be familiar with some of this. Like for instance, Isabella is known for her Hungar style, which is earthbending, and and it's funny because she is a very down to earth girl. And then Jesus it's drunken boxing style. So have you ever heard of drunken boxing style?
Nope, but I heard of the drunken monkey,
Yeah,
so something like that.
yeah, it's probably very similar. So yeah, it's really cool to see that feel of like Jackie Chan slash Avatar: The Last Airbender, I guess.
Yeah, and so like the little boy, like he's watching this and he's like all entertained, like he's up in the tree watching this, entertained, like it's like, oh wow, cool, they're like fighting and everything. And then from there, that he notices right next to him is the seafood chew, and then like it startles him. He ends up falling out of the tree where he is caught by the third character known as Silencio. And when he when he catches him, like Silencio is definitely well, he doesn't say anything at the moment, but we quickly learn that Silencio is like the mean one of the group, or like the just like not really the mean one, just the jerk of the group overall.
Very, yeah, very introvert, standoffish. That's the
Yeah.
word.
And then from that, we see that like Seafood Chew seems to be putting a little bit more time and effort when it comes to the training of Silencio because he does have like an inner rage inside of him. When they were attending to like the beehives and everything like that, that's when he was trying to, yeah, go ahead.
Right. Seafood Chew was trying to teach him to remove the honeycombs from the beehive, and the bees were being aggressive to Silencio. Seafood Chew's trying to teach him, no, be like the river, not the wave, because the wave is a powerful thrashing force. Be gentle. And when dealing with honeybees, you have to be gentle, you have to be calm so they don't sting you. Unfortunately, Silencio didn't do that, and he got stung a lot. So.
Yeah, no, what we do learn about Silencio is the fact that because his name is Silencio, which means silence in Spanish, that he is mute. He cannot speak at all. And we'll find out why in a bit. However, the little boy Domingo, they welcome him in, they invite him in, and he is really inspired by like these group of these other kids who are training. Well, they're not really kids. They're like what, teenagers, young adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say young adults. Like he's really inspired by these young adults who are training in martial arts, and he wants to kind of turn his life around because he's a little thief and that's it. But he wants to be something bigger and better than that. So what he decides to do, cross over into like the next morning. Also, well, before we get there, Officer Garcia, she's looking for this kid because this town is relatively peaceful. Nothing happens, and she's always like, "Oh man, I wish something would happen."
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. So she shows up at the dojo and she's like, "Hey, have you seen this kid?" Has a picture of Domingo, and then they're both Isabella and Jesus are like, "Oh no, we haven't kid. What?"
Yeah.
So she's like, "Oh, okay, well, fine." Like, so she goes on like with her merry way.
And something I want to add about Officer Garcia, which I thought was really cool, the voice actors, again, a lot of these voice actors, by the way, they're not known for the voice roles, they're really known for their acting roles. So Garcia is voiced by Angelica Vale, and it's awesome because I used to watch this novela when I was a kid, no, young adult, called La Fea Más Bella, and she played the main character in that show, which by the way means the prettiest ugly girl. It was so popular in that time that it got translated into American where it was Ugly Betty. Yeah, it was a big hit in the novellas, and it also became, I guess, a hit in America too. So
It's really cool because I actually really loved Ugly Betty.
yeah, I tried getting into it, but I couldn't. But I still love La Fea Más Bella, which is fine.
Yeah, and so from there, we end up kind of segueing to the U.S. real quick, where now we're introduced to a DEA agent known as Agent Brister. And so here's the thing with Agent Brister is that they kind of went for like a black exploitation depiction of this character. Now I'm not sure if they did that on purpose or not. I'm not always the biggest fan of that, and with him being the only black character to draw reference from, I can't really tell if they did it on purpose or not. But since the series does take place in the 70s, I will kind of lean over to say that perhaps they did. Also, because the voice actor for him is Mike Coulter, who plays Luke Cage in the Marvel Netflix series, and that series also was a black exploitation type series. I think that was the direction they were going for. But I do have issues when it comes to like the character design of like black male characters always being like the big giant like buff black guy who looks and talks and acts like Shaq and has like the deep radio voice because it's such a common trope for black male characters that I'm like, I wish it would did something different with his character design, but they did it on purpose. Okay, I get it. It takes place in the 70s. All right, makes sense. I just wish they had other black characters in the series to kind of draw reference from. They kind of poke fun of like, hey, he's the only one. But with that said, he gets an assignment where pretty much he has to go to Mexico, and then from there, that is where because this is all still taking place in the same night. Silencio, he has a nightmare, which is a flashback to when he was a kid, and he's witnessed his parents get murdered. And then on top of that, uh, he, in order to kind of keep the silence and of keep the secret of who killed his parents, this person also cut out his tongue, and that person is El Balde.
Balde, right? So again, you see El Balde again in the nightmare. So again, so you can already tell this character is going to play a big villainous part in this series.
Yeah, so now it's the next morning. And Domingo, he is gone. Like everybody's eating breakfast. They're like, hey, where's the kid? And it's like, oh, he's gone. And so the reason he's gone is because the dojo is located in an area where there's like a lot of mango trees. And so he had collected some mangoes and he was going to give them back as like, an apology as well as payment for the mango he stole from the vendor the day before. And so he's gone and he went to go do that. Isabella Isabella, Jesus, and Silencio, they also decided to go to town and try to find the kid. And when they're all gone, Sifu Chu is by himself, and then that's when he encounters like the mutated man from who was getting initiated in the beginning at the dojo, and he starts to fight him because this guy is out to kill him, and we also quickly find out that this rabid mutant guy that they can regenerate like when they're injured.
Right, Sifu was deeply outmatched in that aspect because like Sifu definitely kicked a lot of butt.
Yeah,
He was ripping his chest out, cutting off his fingers. But because this demon kept regenerating, even Sifu Chu was like, one of us has seen our very last Sundays.
yeah, and then we're going back to town at this point, and we see that Agent Brister, he's now showed up in Mexico, so he's now in town, and then also the monster is in town too. And then on top of that, like the gang that was pretty much sent out to try to like get the monster, retrieve him back, they're in town too, and then pretty much all chaos breaks loose.
To everything. It just so much havoc, so much going on at once. You got guns, you got
Mm-hmm.
fighting, you got demon mutation on the
Mm-hmm.
loose, gasoline guzzling. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and so yeah, gasoline guzzling, and and then from there, the mutant ends up detonating himself and blows up. A gas station blows up in the process, and then a statue from the momentum of the explosion ends up getting knocked over, and then it falls and it kills Domingo.
Yeah, you see, this is a part that where it got me because I was so sad when Domingo died. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny because like now seeing like because again you're hearing Seis Manos and you're trying to think, oh, okay, this story is gonna revolve around this kid because this kid's playing a big part in episode one. Seeing him killed, then you're like, oh wow, Seis Manos, six hands. You know, this is just about the trio, not gonna be a trio plus one. So
Yeah, and then the thing is, yeah, because you do get attached to Domingo. He wasn't like an annoying kid or anything like that. He really was like turning his life around, doing the right thing, and then like this happened, and it's like, oh man. And then from there, our three heroes they feel really defeated because this kid died. They're really sad about it. They go back to the dojo, and to make things worse, they see that their Sifu is also dead.
yeah, and it sucks because Sifu Chu was something I forgot to mention was like Sifu Chu was a very peaceful man. It gave me a lot of Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender vibe because again he was very peaceful. Even like something I forgot to mention was when he fought the demon, his style of fighting seemed like Bagwar, which means circle fighting. But yeah, the trio they're just distraught because again their father because that's the guy who raised them, and that like yeah he's dead.
And that all that took place in the first episode. So yeah, when you go to watch the series, you're definitely in for a whammy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so from there, we start off with a flashback from Isabella this time, where when she was a little girl, she was burying her pet bird who had passed away, and she had underwent like this was a Taoist
Right,
practice.
It's a Tao form Asian culture where they bury something you love, and you don't cut your hair for 49 days so that the spirit can move free into the next realm.
Fortunately, like at night, a cat like kind of came by and then like dug the bird up and ate it. So she woke up next morning to find this mutilated body of her pet bird, and that really traumatized her. So like more on that later. And so with that said, Silencio. he's angry. Like I said, he has this rage like inside of him, and then his brow starts to turn white, like a little piece of it turns white.
Yeah, and actually, this is very interesting. Something that I started researching is like his style of fighting is actually Bak Mei, which personally I think is like a Northern Shaolin fighting. Again, if probably like firebending, Avatar Last Airbender. But with that being said, there was something that I read about Bak Mei and eyebrow and white eyebrow. So I don't know too much about the connection, but it was an interesting term that I came across.
Yeah, and so at this point, our trio, this is pretty much how they're reacting to the situation. Isabella, she wants to go through the proper like process of burying their seafood, but also has to report the murder as well. So like she goes off to report the murder, and also the agent Brister as well as Officer
Garcia.
Garcia. They decide to kind of team up, but they're not hitting things off as well in the beginning. Jesus, his thing is to go drink. He's at the bar getting drunk, getting living his best life. And then on top of that, Silencio, he's off, and he's now with his girlfriend. Who, by the way, we get an introduction to her in the very first episode, actually, but she is a amputee. She's missing one of her hands, so he's with his girlfriend. And while this is going on, we cut back to El Balde, and he is with like the statue, and he referenced the statue being his mother. So we're like, okay, so this statue thing, Santa Lucifera,
Lucifera.
she is like his mom, and he asks her for her tears. So she doesn't give off any tears, and instead he decides to stab her instead, and then from there collect her blood, and then that's where we end up learning because he makes a comment that hey, if you take a little bit of this, then you get like really strong and powerful, and pretty much you kind of turn into like I don't know, like Bane.
Bane.
Yeah,
Actually,
Bane is a good one.
actually, you here's funny that you said Bane. Danny Trejo also voiced Bane in Young Justice.
Oh, nice. So yeah, you become Bane, and then but if you consume too much, then you go crazy, and you kind of become you become the Hulk essentially.
Yeah, so he starts calling up. He tells his henchmen is like, "Hey, call all the other leaders. I want to gather them all together." And he does, and basically he tricks them. He talks about power. He shows them a little taste of how he becomes more powerful. So they take bigger dosages, not realizing that they that's it. What happened? They all turned into mutant demons, and he was like, "Okay, now go ahead and find me the Jefe San Simon." Because again, that's what he's really after. He's trying to find a crime boss in the little town where the trio's at.
Hmm.
So, but he can't flush him out. So that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, and like what ends up happening is so now that we're back, Isabella, she's pretty much preparing her Sifu's body for proper burial. And that's when she begins. That's when she notices that he has like a lotus tattoo, and she's like, "Whoa, like who were you?" And that kind of starts the whole process of like building that mystery of who the Sufi, the Sifu was, and like how he was connected to everything that's going on. In the meanwhile, Jesus, because he's drunk, he there's a guy who's kind of like the village drunk who's also in the bar with him. He teaches him this technique to hit him in the stomach like three
Yeah, it's like
times.
a three. Yeah, it's a three pong attack, and it really knocks you out. So it's like because again, it's not only quick strikes, but they're pressure point strikes. So and yeah, the little village drunk, his name is Piojito, which means little flea.
Yeah, so like when he does it, it causes him to like
Throw up.
yeah, it causes him to vomit, and then it kind of helps him like I guess sober up a little bit quicker because he's like throwing up all the alcohol that he had just consumed, and then he's pretty much on his way back home after like his drunken night, and then that's when he gets attacked. Now, one thing we forgot to mention was during the battle between the Sifu and the first mutant demon guy that showed up, the demon guy lost the finger. So Jesus, like on his way back home, he gets attacked by the finger, and he's essentially fighting the finger. But
Right, and it's also kind of funny because like Jesus, when he finally grabs that finger, he puts him in the bottle.
yeah,
And even though I actually don't drink, there is a very popular drink that they have a little worm in
exactly.
these bottled drinks. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly. And then so while that happens, more of these demon monsters they end up showing up at the dojo at night. Isabella, she finds the Sifu's diary, and she kind of like starts the process of looking through it.
And also notices that it has a very similar symbol as well.
Oh yeah, it has the lotus on it as well. So Silencio, he's with his girlfriend,
Yeah, well, he asked the girlfriend to sing for him, but while all that is happening, while she's singing for him on the guitar, that's when the demons strike the dojo,
Yeah.
and there's just poor Isabella and Jesus by themselves. They're deeply outnumbered, also slightly outmatched because like these demons are just crazy,
Yeah, they
regenerative.
can regenerate.
Yeah,
But Isabella does come up with a really smart idea. She ends up tossing because they seem to be after the seafood. Like they ran out because at this point his body was already buried. So they seem to be like clawing at his grave and trying to dig up his body. And as you can imagine, this is what reach like it triggers Isabella back to that memory when she had buried her pet bird. And so she's like trying to protect him with everything she can. But she ends up coming up with this really awesome idea.
yeah,
A fire had already started at the dojo, and so like one like a barn was on fire, and so essentially she ends up taking Sifu's body and throwing it in like the burning building, and then like all of the monster guys, the mutant guys, they end up running into the building. She throws two like large bottles of alcohol in there, like shut the door, and then it like all explodes and then
right.
destroys them. And so
She
we
was she was inspired by the gas guzzling explosion.
Yeah, because at that point we learned that that these demons that they can regenerate, that they seem to have a weakness to fire, which is awesome.
Hmm. Fast segueing a little bit sooner forward, we end up finding a curandera, which is a healer using folk remedies, and I actually really like this character because while Brister finds the curandera, he also ends up being triggered.
Yeah, because what happens is we start off at this point, another flashback with Brister, and he is fighting in the Vietnam War. He finds himself there, but it's the visions that are being caused by or repressed memories, I guess, being caused by the Curandela.
Yeah, and actually it's good on data.
Curandela.
But what's really cool was like as he's laying down, she's using an egg on his forehead, and this is a common like Latin remedy, old fashioned remedy, which is you lay an egg on their head or stomach, and you're removing all negative energy and trapping it in the egg. So
Hmm.
that's what she was doing with him. She was trying to take all the negative energy and repress it into the egg.
Yeah, and she also ends up doing like this form like a spell on Officer Garcia as well to try to figure out like because they went to her initially because Officer Garcia is like, hey, like this mutant demon guy, like this is like a supernatural thing, so we need somebody who specializes in that to help us kind of solve this crime, which is why they were there in the first place. And when they told her, she didn't believe her, so she's like, I need proof, and so she ends up kind of doing like this little ritual spell on Officer Garcia, and that's what she was able to kind of see like through her eyes everything that went on. And then on top of that, that's when she was able to also see El Balde
Right.
and see that he's connected to everything that's going on.
Right. It was a form of astral projection.
Yeah.
But the scary part is that because El Balde was able to see and was like, wait, how can you see me? And she
Hmm.
had a disconnect from the astral projection quick.
Yeah.
And she was actually shaking. She was actually nervous. Like, they were like, what did you see? And actually, it's like, nah, it's actually what saw me. So,
Yeah, and so from there, they have to go back now to the town, and she ends up giving Brister a necklace for protection, but she also gives Officer Garcia like a little
boom.
brush, yeah, like a little broom brush thing, and then so while that was going on back at the dojo because it's practically burned down. Isabella ends up finding the diary of their seafood, but the diary was unfortunately was burned too, and it's like, oh man, like they go a chance of like unraveling this mystery of his murder and like who he was. Also, so at this point, the trio they all decide that yeah, there's something kind of weird and supernatural going on here. Let's go to a priest. Let's go to someone who specializes in this to kind of help us out here.
Going back to La Curandera because what's happening is that she actually, after meeting with Bristol and Garcia, she actually gets a premonition. And this is where I was lost the first time. When I first saw this, we see a woman getting beaten, we see a mother with their kid, and then a kid killing a gentleman, and it's like, but now seeing it, now I understand it. It's basically this kid is Balde. He's called Maldemar. This lady is his mother, obviously, and the mother was apparently in a bad abusive relationship. So now we start getting answers, and in the end of that premonition, El Balde enslaved his mother. In that, and that's why. So now, this whole time of him getting the tears, his mother's his prisoner.
Hmm. And then going back to the trio, so we're now back. We're actually at the church now. They explained to the priest everything that was going on. They show him like the demon finger inside of the jar, or yeah, inside the jar, and he ends up performing a exorcist on it, where all shenanigans broke loose because the
Yeah.
finger got out of the bottle and it like ended up kicking everybody's butt. It got caught on fire. Like it's just a lot of stuff happened to this finger.
Yeah, that the finger wasn't having it. It was like, oh no, you're not gonna exercise me.
Finger exercises. But anyway, yeah. So from there, a trio they decide to spend the night like at the church as they're trying to figure out what's
Yeah,
going on.
it
And
was a form of sanctuary.
yeah, and then in the process, that's when Jesus ends up coming across a lot of cocaine that was hidden in the church. And then that's where we end up realizing that like the priests and everything going on, that they're also crime lords too.
Right. Like he is a major drug dealing kingpin.
And with that said, because they discovered it, the priests were pretty much like, kill those guys. They can't, they're witnesses. And all the shooting takes place. Another big battle is taking place. In the meanwhile, both Agent Brister as well as Officer Garcia, they arrive back in town. They're like, oh no, what's going on at the church? They jump into the fray and they decide to try to help out as well. Now, what ends up happening at this part is Silencio, because he is just has so much rage in him. He like ends up fighting the priest. He has them up in the air, and Isabella's like, no, don't do it, like don't kill him, and then he ends up killing him
Yeah.
out of all of his rage, because ultimately the reasons why is something to understand. They feel that the priest is responsible in some way in the death of their Sifu, who was their dad. And then on top of that, their nice little quiet town is not as like pure as they thought it was. It's being used to hide and harbor drugs. So because of all of that, like the priest is responsible for that. And Silencio, in his fit of rage, he takes him out, he kills him, and then like more of his eyebrow turns white.
hmm And bad timing too, because that's when Brister and Garcia come in and they see this, and Silencio has no choice but to run away because he
Hmm.
did just murder, and not just murder a person, murder a priest, especially in the eyes of Agent Brister and Officer Garcia.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, the other two, Isabella and Jesus, and they're thrown in jail. Now, one thing we did forget to comment on is that necklace that Brewster had for protection. It actually did protect them, because one of the many flying bullets that was going on in the church had hit that necklace and actually protected his like heart from getting hit by the bullet.
Yeah, and it was a pretty thick necklace, guys.
Yeah,
Like we're not talking like a little. Like there was three layers to that necklace. So
nice. And then that's also it's the same revelations as made by Officer Garcia, that oh wow, like this entire time, like this nice peaceful quiet village.
paradise. Yeah, her paradise was a place protected by crime.
Yeah.
So, and well, now we're segueing into the jail. Brister and Garcia, they're trying to get answers, and Isabella and Jesus, they're being very honest because they're themselves are in the middle of all this, so they don't really know what's going on. So all of a sudden, these supposedly state police
Hmm.
come in, but and then as they go into the building, you see in another building there's these two snipers, and they're guarding the entrance. Very quickly we see these are not cops. So
Yeah, and like while this is all going on, well, yeah, like you say, they're not cops. Another fight breaks out, and so there all this fighting is happening in like the police department in town. While all this is going on, Silencio the entire time was once again hiding out with his girlfriend, where they decide to, hey, let's just run away and just start all new lives. So they're on the run. In the process of them being on the run, like his girlfriend, she drives like a big old like huge,
truck.
yeah, like truck, and that's when she ends up like telling him that, hey, I'm actually been transporting the drugs. the entire time. And so like that, when he finds that out, he like takes the wheel and pulls over like, like what, like
So, seriously, he could have killed them both.
yeah. So as you can see, like there's so much in this town that has to deal with like drugs and stuff like that, and so everybody's world's kind of getting turned upside down.
Yep. And going back to the jail, you gotta hand it to Sifu too. He definitely trained Isabella and his well, all the three very well because at this point, Isabella and Jesus they're handcuffed,
Hmm.
and he's again supposed cops are ready to actually kill them. They're about to shoot him, and luckily they're still even handcuffed. They're still dodging the attacks. They're still. I was just like, wow, these guys are just amazing fighters.
Yeah, and so El Balde, he like segue over to him. He has some of the flesh from his mother, and then he ends up giving this flesh to some stray dogs that were starving. Now, as a little bit of a note, these were also dogs because Isabella is actually like a sweet person, sweet caring person. So while they were like locked away in jail, she was giving like her scraps of food to these starving dogs that were outside the prison the entire time because that's just a nice person that she is.
Hmm.
And El Balde ended up giving these same dogs by chance, like the village strays. He ends up giving them like some flesh that was from his mother, and because they're eating a lot of her flesh, they end up mutating to like they became these mutant demon dogs,
Yeah.
and then he sent them off to the prison to hunt down the trio Isabella and Jesus and take them out.
Hmm.
And oh, you go ahead.
No, yeah. So, no, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, everything's going crazy because again, the demon dogs enter the building.
Yeah, they end up entering the building and then they're attacking everybody. Now, one funny thing is, and forgot to mention this earlier, is that the village drunk also was in the next cell across from them. So one of the demon dogs goes into the cell and he's like, "Oh no!" And this dog is like, is scratching at him and stuff. Is going to kill him. And so he does like that three, like
yeah,
hit you in the stomach technique. And then the dog throws up and throws up like the hunk of meat that it ate, and then it turns back to a dog again, a regular
yeah.
dog again.
So yeah, Piojito saves the day in this one. So
Yeah, and so with that, that's the end of figuring out, hey, if we do this technique, it turns back to a regular dog because the other dog, it went to go attack Isabella, but then it remembered, oh wait, you're the one who had fed me food earlier, and so it wasn't going to attack her, but it still did the tech. Well, Jesus did the technique. Not Jesus. Yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
yeah,
Jesus.
Jesus. He did the technique on the dog, and on that, it threw up the meat, and then it turned back to a regular dog. However, at this point, like the big battle's now over, right? They
Right.
took out the demon dogs. They took out like
The
the
snipe.
impo- yeah the impo- no the imposter cops. Then that's when they realized that wait, there were some snipers, wasn't there? Because there were some bullets flying around somewhere.
Yeah.
They go outside, and Silencio, he had actually returned and he took out the snipers. Once again, you see that rage kind of taking over him because he's like killing people now. Like they were not taught to do that, and he's like now he's killing people. Like, come on, dude. And
Yeah.
then that is when El Balde shows up, and he had drunk some of the blood from his mom, so he's now like in Hulk mode as well. But he can control it because he didn't consume too much of it, and he's all like, oh, it's pretty much like that series that and Endgame. I think in Endgame, but that yeah, when Thanos is like that meme where he's like, "Oh, fine, I do it myself," and he gets
Mhm.
the glove. It's kind of that situation with El Balde, and when he does that, they're like, "Oh crap, this guy's going to destroy us!" And then out of nowhere, Silencio's girlfriend comes in with the truck and completely like hits him with the truck, rams him into the wall. Unfortunately, she got injured in the process as well. But
Yeah.
then the cops, Officer Garcia, as well as Brister, like, and they're in the cop car and they're like, "Get in, like, let's get out of here." So they all jump in and they manage to escape.
Yeah, and ironically, the truck was not enough because Albalde can regenerate as well.
Hmm.
So it's like, Jesus, like not even a truck can kill this guy.
All right, yeah, and so pretty much they're in the car. Once again, this is like a supernatural situation, so we need some supernatural help. So they go out to the Curandella, and at the same time, ironically, she got in her car and she had already left her place and she was going into town to find the cops. So they end up passing her on the road, and then that's when
Yeah, so actually, the curandera she gets a premonition again. So by a lady named Alejandra. So this we start finding out a little bit about her. For one, her name is Garabina, and Garabina finds out, like, she gets that premonition, and the Bolde's mother, they knew each other, and apparently Garabina was also in an abusive relationship, and Alejandra helped her, take care of that situation because she helped Garabina kill, I guess, whether it was her abusive husband or abusive boyfriend or something like that. So now that because Alejandra asked her for help, she wants a favor in return. What I assume by the favor in return is that, again, Alejandra helped Garabina kill her husband, and now because Garabina is a shaman, she can help probably free Alejandra.
Yeah, the like our heroes, they end up at her place. All right, so since the Curandela is not there, they're like, okay, well, we got to go back. Let's go to the dojo. So then that's when they end up going back to the dojo, and then there was someone waiting for them, no, who is Lo. And they at first they end up fighting him. They're like, okay, this is actually a really well skilled old man who can fight really well. But they end up discovering that, oh wait, Lo is the brother of Sifu.
Chew.
And the thing is, I'm actually a little bit curious if they purposely like chose the name Low for him because like Low, if you kind of get that in terms of like it references him potentially not being like the best person or the best people. But for right now, he doesn't come across as a threat.
Yeah.
And he does show them proof that hey, like this is my brother. He shows them like a picture of them when they were younger, supposedly as like proof. And from there, the Curandella, she's in town, but she was captured about El Balde.
Right. So, and at this point, like, Bolde is gathering up all the people in the small little town, trying to make an example. So he definitely gets the mayor of the town and ties him up and gets ready to, like, hangs him up like piñata, basically. So, and again, to show an example, he pretty much beats him down like piñata and kills him.
Yeah, and then it's now the Carandella's turn to be like what is the word like to be done like a pinata.
Yeah.
And so the cops they take off, they rush into town. Once again, three heroes, they're back in the dojo. Like, wait, what just happened? I'm just also realizing that there's like a lack of communication like between like of these characters because it's like why didn't they all just go to town together instead of running off?
I
But
think I
okay.
think for the trio is because right now because of Sifu Lo, they're very curious and they ask him to train them. And something they're very different. Like I said, Chu was very peaceful with his training. I did notice that Lo was very aggressive with his training to the point where it starts making you question. I was like, wait a minute, like why is he being so aggressive with these guys? Like it's yeah, I know they're brothers, but there's definitely something up.
Yeah, he also takes like he takes a special interest in Silencio as well. Going back to Officer Garcia as well as Brister, they managed to like get into town. They managed to end up saving the Curandella.
Yeah, but barely because even though Balde didn't do the final whack to her, he did like smack her around a bit.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, like thankfully they did save him, but even Officer Garcia is like, I don't think she's gonna make it.
Yeah, and unfortunately she didn't, but she did tell Officer Garcia, hey, like, make sure to eat these magic mushrooms because I use them as well. What I'm doing, like my like supernatural thing. And so she does, and she pretty much like, goes on a trip, but it's like a spiritual trip to kind of give them like that supernatural edge that they're gonna need to help like unsolve this mystery that is going on with the crime lord as well as like Sifu as well. And when that happens, the Curandella, she did die, unfortunately. Officer Garcia, she is still in mid trip when it came to those magic mushrooms. However, from that, she's able to come up with a plan, and it's like, oh, okay, now she's aware of the existence of El Balde's mom, and it's like, okay, we need to like
Find
we need
Alejandra.
to find her, and that's like the key to this, and kind of stopping him, and like him creating mutants while also mutating himself.
And then also something interesting. So the while all five of them work together, so they all lead the dojo. So finally, we see Sifu Lo. doing some investigating, but at the same time, he ends up killing the
Yeah,
girlfriend.
like we noticed that he starts getting sick. That's the first thing we started noticing is that it's like he's starting to age rapidly and get sick or something like that. He's getting frail, and then he just like in cold blood completely kills Silencio's girlfriend, and then like that was that. And it's like at this point we realize you cannot trust this guy
Yeah,
whatsoever.
and that goes back to where I was saying he was so aggressive with them
But he also ends up getting like the burned diary,
and
and there,
restores
yeah,
it.
he restores it using like this powder, this magic powder to restore it. And then there, he's reading through because he's trying to find this thing that supposedly Sifu had and that he may have hidden.
hmm And going back to the town, like I said, El Bolde was making an example of everyone. So sure enough, El Bolde and all his men, they killed every adult
Hmm.
in that town, leaving the children alive, but again, killing every adult.
Yeah, they kind of made them into like children slaves essentially. Like they kind of help them do stuff. With that said, the trio they end up well, it's not a trio anymore because they also have like
Officer Garcia and Agent Brewster.
Yeah, they also have the two of them. So all five of them, all five of our heroes, end up breaking into a location that El Balde's mom is being held. And from there, there's like a lot of fighting, a lot of, battling and stuff going on once again. And then in the process, Isabella, she ends up finding like, the statue, the Santa Lucifea statue. And when she wears like this necklace that also has like that lotus symbol on it. So when she touches it, then she is now
Possessed.
possessed.
Yeah, I was actually very cool, and I wonder when she did get possessed. I wonder if this was a reference to La Llorona, which
Mhm.
is also another, even though Latino but mainly Mexican folklore. La Llorona is kind of like a banshee, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Yeah, and then like from there, that's when El Balde also shows up on the location, and he ends up consuming a lot of like his mom's blood, and from there he goes like in full like Hawk mode. Now, one thing that was going on is that the entire time, Lo he is reading his so-called well brother's diary. He's really well, I shouldn't say brother anymore, but he's reading like Chu's diary, and as he's going through, like he's trying to like once again figure out a mystery. Like he supposedly Chu hid something, so that's what he's trying to find. Now I found this really awesome, and because I'm a nerd, I was like piecing together like the little like historical things that was going on because it's about Lo's journey, essentially, journey to the west, where he left China, he ended up going like going to Mexico. And the thing is, I do believe this may have taken place in the 1940s because between like 1880 and 1940, there was a huge like Chinese migration to the states as well as to Mexico. And so we kind of got to see a little bit of that. I think it's really cool that I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but I think it was because the timing lines up really, really well that they added that little detail in there. They kind of like, justify like why there is like this Chinese seafood, like, Taoist in Mexico in the first place. Mexico does have has a pretty decent Chinese population.
hmm and also later on, we because Isabella is possessed,
Hmm.
her astral form it meets up with Sifu Chu.
Yeah, in the spirit world or the spirit plane, something like
Yeah, yeah.
that.
Well, yeah, we'll call it the spirit plane.
Yeah, and then meanwhile though, El Balde and his mom, they're like in this epic
It
battle.
is. It's really crazy. You got supernatural Yorona against demonic Hulk. So it was really a very interesting, cool battle, in my opinion.
Yeah, she was kicking his butt. And
Yeah.
then, Silencio being like the angry man he is. He's like, I want to join the fight too. Hopefully, good thing Jesus managed to kind of stop him from joining the fight. Like he has to kind of fight him a little bit himself, but he kind of reasons with him in the process. Like, dude, you can't. No, like those are like some super powered, juiced up people. You stay out of that.
That fight scene actually between Jesus and Silento made me like Jesus even more because he did it so simple. He
Hmm.
did it so simple where Silento is so aggressive, but he was like tick tick tick, and sure enough, like Silento, Jesus was able to restrain him.
Yeah, so we do know, like, in order to stop El Balde, like, we're gonna have to use fire, because that's the only thing that the mutants are weak against. However, when it comes to like possess Isabella, like, how do we save her? That is when Officer Garcia she ends up using like her new supernatural senses and abilities
hmm
to like realize that, oh wait, I need to collect these special petals as a means of kind of binding
Yeah.
the spirit, right? So she goes off to do that. And in the process, like Sifu, that's when he tells Isabella that the symbol of the lotus that she's been chasing after this entire time to pull together this mystery is not a lotus, it's actually
A
a peach
peach blossom.
blossom, which is a symbol of immortality.
Yeah, and that's why going back to Sifu Lo, that's what he's in search of.
Yep, and that's what Chu has been hiding this entire time. He had found like there was some a device he's able to that was able to grant people immortality. Well, what it was there's a peach, and it's able to grant people immortality, and he pretty much took it with him and he hid it to keep Lo from having access to that. And so, and while that was going on, Isabella also, she realized she's starting to fight back and trying to get control of her body. And while in the spirit world, she ends up accessing the memories of
Of
Balde's,
Alejandra.
yeah, of Balde's mother, and able to use those to help her remember that this is your son and you love him, and that's kind of what helped stop the fighting briefly, anyway.
Yeah, and that's, if anything, I know a lot of mothers, of course, love their sons, but there is
Hmm.
something about Latin culture where, like, moms really, like, no matter what their child does, like, they always love their child to a point. Like, there's an unconditional love that moms usually have for their children.
Yeah, and from there they have a really sweet moment. Mutant El Balde, like Hawk, and possessed Isabella. They have this really sweet moment. The fighting is now done, and then that is when
Jesus.
Silencio.
Oh, Jesus kind of
Yeah, no,
messes
yeah,
it
yeah,
up.
yeah. They mess it up because they're throwing liquor bottles at them and like is busting on his head, and then they set them on fire, and it's like really, ah man, ah man. And then Silencio comes in and he's fighting like he's fighting El Balde, and then he ends up like taking his head and like shoving it down, like in what is it? It's like a it wasn't a pot, was it?
Oh, I wish I could
Yeah, it
remember.
was like a pot or something, but it pretty much was like a lot of fire. He ends
Yeah.
up like shoving his face in it, burns his face up, in the process also killing him.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
no, and I was just gonna add, and unbeknownst to the possessed Isabella Alejandra, that's when Officer Garcia takes advantage and
Mm-hmm.
binds her. So we got,
Yeah, she takes like a flower, like a necklace of yeah,
yeah,
flower
flowers.
necklace, and then she places it on her, and that's what bounds her.
Yeah, and so finally, the last thing was like, okay, well, now we have to free Isabella.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, Garcia was like, okay, I'm going to try to use an exorcism spell. I mean, I'm not sure how to do this, but I'm going to try. So remember when we commented about the broom?
Mm-hmm.
So with the little broom, so she does the little incantation like sweep away, sweep away. So sweeping away all the evil inside Isabella to cleanse her.
Yep, and luckily it all worked. It was able to kind of suck the spirit back into that necklace. While all of that was going on, Lo ended up actually finding the immortal peach. It was hidden inside of one of the mango trees, and then from there he got it and he ate it. Now I will say this: I think it would have been more because it's like okay, so it's an immortal peach. It's in a tree. It's in a mango tree. I kind of feel like I'm pretty sure there's peaches in Mexico, and so I kind of feel like, well, why didn't they just have a bunch of peach trees around? Because then, the issue could have been that oh, there's all these peaches here. Which one is the one that I need? Because it
Mhm.
looked like a regular peach, and I just kind of thought that was like a little interesting. But then again, I don't know. Maybe there's just not a
Yeah.
lot of peaches in Mexico, which is why they
Yeah, I
went
would
the
have to
mango
research.
route.
Yeah, I would have to research that.
And so,
Our
pretty,
heroes head back to the
yeah, they
shrine.
end up going back to the dojo, and then that's when they end up bumping into Lo. Lo is now younger,
Actually, you know
and
what? Before that, didn't
mhm.
they find the girlfriend dead first?
Oh yeah, that was the big thing. When they make it back to the dojo, they see well Silencio was the first one to find her dead body there, and then in the process that's when they see Lo, and Lo's like oh he's like super
Young.
powered, like well he's not young but he's younger,
Yeah.
and he has like superpowers. He's flying in the air. He also has this magic sword
Yeah,
that he's
that's
commanding on will, and it's like flying around and stuff attacking like everybody. And as you can imagine, like a whole nother fight breaks out, but we also ends up learning out like the final full mystery of their Sifu. So their Sifu start out was he was an orphan, and essentially he was made into a child soldier to work for Lo. And he was very angry, had a lot of rage as a kid, and Lo used that to kind of help like harbor this and make him to like this fierce warrior. And he became like his personal assassin for Lo. Over time, Chu figured out that this isn't good, this is not a way to live life, and that also Lo had access to the immortal peach. So he ends up stealing the peach, and he also ends up escaping. And then that's when he goes to Mexico to start a whole new life. And that's why Lo has been on the search to try to pretty much get his immortal peach back so he can live forever and also have like all his like power set at his disposal.
And also, in Lo and Silencio, they actually fight, and not only do they fight in physically, they
Hmm.
end up fighting in the spirit
Yeah, the
realm.
spirit realm.
So, this is where we really find out why Lo is so interested in him. Lo wants to train Silencio because Silencio is just so fierce. He wants to mold him into his own personal weapon.
Hmm. And then, so overall, Lo end up winning over Silencio, and then Helicopter comes in, ends up picking up Lo. It also ends up taking Silencio with them. Now, earlier when they were kind of fighting with the sword, Isabella did get cut on her face, so she's gonna have like a new scar, like in season 2, on the side of her face. And yeah, so our heroes they kind of patch themselves up, and they're like, "We need to get to China. We need to get Silencio back."
Yeah, and then also going back to Brister's boss, he comes in, he
Yeah,
makes
the
an appearance.
DEA, like they showed up.
Yeah, because they arrest Brister
Hmm.
because of all the craziness that went on.
Yeah, but they do realize that there was like a supernatural element tied to it as well. They do acknowledge that, so I'm like, okay, that's good. So I guess he's locked up for now, but he's not gonna stay in prison forever.
Yeah, I would hope not.
Yeah, and then from there, a couple other revelations that are made is that because the city is now just ran by a bunch of kids, Officer Garcia, she's gonna stay in the city and well, in the town, and she is going to like continue to protect the town and get it back to like its good standing that it was and have it not be associated with drugs at all.
Right, and also it's kind of funny because like Isabella, going back to Isabella and Jesus, they're like, well, how are we gonna make it to China? Well, luckily the kids, they find
Yeah,
all this drug money.
yeah, like we have all this drug money.
So yeah, I thought it was really cute. They're like, "Oh, we can't accept this." Is like, "No, no, we're actually buying you because we want to buy Officer Garcia from you because we want
Hmm.
Garcia to protect us."
Yeah, and so cutting back, so now we're in China. Also, during the battle between Lo and Silencio, his eyebrow, because of his rage, it went completely white. So he has like a fully white eyebrow. So he wakes up, he's in China, he's like in this temple, and then that is when he sees Lo and like his followers. So like yeah, they kidnapped him, he's now there, and I guess we'll find out like the next part of that story in season 2. So that concludes like the whole storytelling part of everything. For me, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this show. Like, yeah, it was definitely really dark and like it was a lot. It was like a lot of gore, a lot of violence in the very beginning. But I really liked it because it is refreshing to get like stories like this told from like different cultures and stuff like that. It's because usually, especially growing up in the '90s, like we had like Three Ninjas and like Karate Kid and stuff like that. When I was '80s, but we had those type of movies, and then the way they classically go is that you have like this Chinese like mentor and he's always teaching like I don't know, he's always teaching like typically like some white kids or something, and then like there there's just that, but there's no extra cultural elements added to it. But because this took place in Mexico, we were able to add like that whole like brujeria, like supernatural aspect of it, which was
Mhm.
really really cool.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And then the art style reminded me a lot of the Adventures of Jackie Chan. Oh no, the
Yeah.
Jackie Chan Adventures. That's what it was called. That used to come on, I think, Cartoon Network. And I feel like it was really refreshing to see that because I don't see that art style used a lot in today's world. So I really enjoyed the art style. I really enjoyed the storytelling, the cultural aspects of it. There was just a lot of cool things about it I really did like.
hmm And I did too. Like I said, it was funny when I said this earlier. The first time it was rough for me, but the second time, everything made more sense.
Hmm.
And I like, and also culturally, yeah, I'm familiar with a lot of these things. Like it was very funny, especially with brujeria, and also just seeing even like again going back to the curandera, when she was doing her I guess Latin sorcery, she would always
Hmm.
drink like a little bit of liquor, which again is very common in some Latin culture when it comes to brujeria or santeria.
Yeah, so with that said, I guess is there any like thoughts or anything you'd like to see going into season two?
No, nothing I can think of. I never have a prediction of what to see into these seasons sometimes. So I am curious how they are going to make it to China, and because again, China is a massive,
Hmm.
massive country. So because there are so many parts, like I don't know how they're gonna end up finding Silencio, but I'm sure the writers will find a clever way to do it.
So I definitely want to see Brister like out of jail and also in
Hmm.
China as well and teaming up with the team again. I would like to see Officer Garcia do the same thing. I actually would like to see her and Brister together.
Yeah.
They kind of hinted towards like okay, there's a little something something there, but at the same time, if they go like the black the black exploitation route with his character, he's gonna get with a new woman every single season. That's gonna be the thing, and I can see that happening in China. They're gonna team up with like some Chinese agent to kind of help like unmask everything that's going on. So I can definitely see that. I'm really curious what's going to happen to Silencio, but I also feel like I hate to say this, but I could see Silencio dying. Not necessarily season two, then make to season three. I think because it's gonna be one of those things where there's not like a redemption for him because he's now like gone across over to the dark side and he killed too many people.
I don't know. I may disagree there because again, it's called Seis Manos for a reason. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't see their third person dying like that.
yeah, we'll see. But other than that, I don't know. I don't have anything else to add. What about you?
No, I enjoyed it. I do look forward to season two and seeing what the writers have to bring.
All right. So with all that said, everyone, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy it, go ahead and give us a thumbs down. And if you like us, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so when we upload videos, which typically we try to aim for every Saturday, you will get a notification, so you can be the first ones to watch it. Make sure to comment, tell us some of your thoughts if you've seen this series, or if you just like listen to us talk about it and spoil it for you. Let us know and like talk with us. We want to engage with you. And then from there, yeah. So I guess you have anything else you want to add before we tune out?
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.